like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'm Aaron. So I work for a Microsoft partner down in the South Coast called Transparency. And my job role there is sort of applications and development technical lead. So anything sort of pre-sales or TDA and products and services related sort of falls in my camp.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now, some of you may have noticed that we're looking a little bit different if you have seen us on YouTube, and you may even have noticed and be joining us live. This wasn't entirely intended, it's fair to say, but Microsoft Teams decided that just as we were recording was the perfect time to have a bit of an outage, and we couldn't let that stop us, because today we're going to be talking about the joy of community, and we didn't want to hold back on that. So we've spun over to something that actually we found out about from the Scottish Summit, something called Restream, which we're giving a go. No idea how we're going to get this onto the podcast yet. No idea how well it's going to be recorded. So apologies. Things are a bit different. Hopefully it will all work. If not, blame Microsoft. So what we're going to talk about today, I think we'll pick three main topics. We're first going to go through, and we'll start with Aaron first, talking about what brought you into the community. You know, what was it that got you started with things? Next, we'll go on to talking about why. What are the benefits of getting involved in community stuff? And then finally, we'll talk about getting involved, because I think, myself excluded, we've all got involved in creating user groups, and Aaron will talk about the South Coast Summit, which we're very, very excited about. Big in-person event, which will be absolutely huge this year, later this year. And yeah, really sharing what's going on. So let's kick off with how we started in the community. And Aaron, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose it's only more recent for me. I think when I moved to Transparency 2 years ago, things really sort of kicked into gear. A colleague and I wanted to create a South Coast user group, which is obviously where the South Coast Summit sort of was born from. So it took a few months to get the South Coast user group up and running. And as part of that, we sort of said, right, let's try and do a bigger one-day conference. And that's obviously where South Coast Summit came from. But before that, I suppose the odd user groups, the ones in person back in a time when we weren't in lockdown.
Sweet memories.
But yeah, before that, a bit of blogging, and then it sort of went quiet for a few months. Work commitments, getting married, having kids sort of got in the way a little bit. But then before that, 15 years ago, when my SharePoint career started out, and I was doing all my training with Combined Knowledge, and you've got your Steve Smiths and your Penny Coventrys. That was, I think, the start of it. And then I was at another Microsoft partner for 10 years before Transparency, and learning the trade, getting that experience. And then joining Transparency 2 years ago was really the kickstart for me, being part of that community. Joining up Twitter, or I had Twitter, but I think if you looked at my history 2 years ago, is very minimal, and now it's every day's. To be fair, Twitter is my lifeline. Just learning about the new products, what's coming, is a lifeline for me in just my day-to-day work.
Twitter's really, really important though, isn't it? Can you remember a world before Twitter, and how on earth did we get information before Twitter was around?
Well, I think the thing is, 2 years ago, you'd have, well, maybe not, but maybe 3 years ago, you would have your community of updates, your service patches. So coming from a SharePoint world, you had a good handle on, right, this is what I've got for 6 months. I know what it is. It's a bit like the Biz Apps wave release. You know what's coming.
Yeah.
And then Office 365, and then you've got the new functionality every week at the moment. So LinkedIn, Twitter is the place to go to find out what's landing and when. And there's some really good people to follow as well, just to, without having to trawl the internet or check the websites or blogs. it's pretty useful.
I think that's one of the things. So I got started back in my SQL days, back 2007, going to SQL Bits, the very first SQL Bits, which was about 50 people in Reading, and you got a free book, which is awesome. And that
Like
made
a
it
real
all worth
book,
a
like
real
a paper
book, yeah.
Ooh.
But I think one of the things I found was finding people to trust to say actually they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And we were having a quick discussion before we started whilst we were trying desperately to get teams to work. And there are certain people, as you say, Penny, Mark McRae, Tony Pounder, Brett, everybody who's been around for years, we're doing this right at the very start. But those are the trusted names that you kind of go, now they used to be and still are the people that are going to know the answers to questions. And I think for me, it was kind of...
You've got the Steve Smiths. I remember my SharePoint journey 2010 doing a workshop up in Leicester. And, Steve was heavily involved in all the testing of the product, worked closely with the product team, involved in all the exams. So the training that you were doing, it was written by him and he was involved in the exams, and he's tested it firsthand as part of that product group. But obviously now, Microsoft 365 is much bigger than it was back then. But yeah, Penny Coventry, SharePoint designer workflows, she was the go-to person.
Yeah, it's funny thinking back, reeling off the names now, and you're thinking they've been around for a decade. I think the first conference that I went to when I kind of got into SharePoint, for real, as my a core focus in my job was SharePoint Saturday Nottingham. 2011, and that was a good 400 at a conference. Everyone getting together, international speakers as well. Todd Clint was there doing a keynote as well, obviously coming over from America. And you're looking back, and these people we're talking about, they've been MVPs right back to the very beginning when everything was done through blogs. And then you'd get onto Twitter and you'd be able to follow people like Mark Anderson as well. I followed him for a long time with a lot of SP services that he built, their community tools before GitHub, when it was,
Those were the days.
Codeplex, I think it was.
Right.
Before
yes,
that. Yeah, and you've seen those people that have been part of the community for so long and still continue to drive things forward as well. I think definitely from very early on in my career, these are the people that have inspired me to go on and go, you know what, actually, I know things as well, and I'm going to share that with people. And the more that we share, obviously technology's had a great impact on that over the 10 years that I've been doing it. But it all comes back to, people willing to share and, spend their free time as well, sharing that information. So yeah, it's funny reeling off the names, and you're like, yeah, it's still around now.
And it's funny. I think if I go back, I remember the Evolution conferences in London and seeing lots of international speakers. I remember seeing Chris Johnson there and loving listening to him, and now listening to him on a regular basis on the Microsoft Cloud show and getting them through there. But I think for me, probably the real start of getting involved in the community was trying to create something that you could define some sort of templates to create bits of SharePoint sites and things like that. And I got about halfway through creating it and suddenly stumbled across PMP and the PMP provisioning. I was like, this is amazing. Oh, this must be something from Microsoft. I know it is open source. Oh, and actually there's a group of people who are involved in it, and just starting to follow that. Around that time, wanted to kind of pay it back slightly, be able to get involved there. And Collab 365 was starting there. I think they had was it the 48-hour marathon? They did non-stop overnight conferences, which is absolutely mad. So I applied to speak on there and got accepted. I think that was my first virtual speaking event. But when it came to in person, I'd been to a few user groups, but it was if you pardon my French, I always felt a bit of a dick, kind of standing up and going to talk to people. I just, it wasn't natural. It's taken me quite a long time to kind of go out there and actually start chatting. And I remember ESPC, what was it, in Vienna? I think it was 2017, and actually making up a bit of effort to go and chat to people at the end, chat to other people involved there. I joined a hackathon. Visa was there. Eric Schutz was, he was helping out with the hackathon as well, and actually chatting about it. And I just remember Visa standing at the top and going, oh, it's like the real Visa. This is amazing.
Yeah, these are real people.
Yeah, they're actually live and stuff like that. And that kind of inspired me to get more and more. And then joining Al at CPS has just pushed that on even more. And
I mean, that's the difference between a user group and a conference. And a user group, you get to meet people and speak to people and actually make those connections that, in the days before Twitter, you knew that you could actually just email somebody and ask them a question. And I think, in those days, it really was, well, actually, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what's wrong with this. I know somebody who knows. And, Twitter makes that really easy. But for user groups, it was really, go and speak to people, share a slice of pizza and a can of Coke with somebody and actually have a chat. And I remember I used to have one colleague and he just didn't speak to anyone. And it was kind of like, okay, you're going to sit there and listen, but you're not going to speak to people. You've got to speak to people. Building your network, you know who to ask questions of. And that was really important back then.
Yeah, there's always times where I think back to user groups, and I remember seeing you, Al, come and doing a session with one of your colleagues, and I remember you from that, and then for years I've known of you, and I've never actually met you in person until like a few years ago. But that's all through the community. It's kind of like we're having a conversation, you're talking to someone who you've known of for a long time. So you're already kind of, the people in your circle as well. So, everyone's got things in common, pains as well, obviously dealing with SharePoint. That's why we've got the SharePoint afterwards.
You've got to have a SharePoint afterwards.
Got to have a grumble. That's what it is. You've got to get that pain out, right?
So I think we've talked about some of the benefits there of being able to ask questions, but I think it's more than that as well. It's being able to hear the latest things that come through, but getting involved in the community, you also get a different angle to things. You don't just get the Microsoft kind of, this is what Microsoft says, this is the way of doing things. I mean, Gary, you work with the CLI and the areas there. That's obviously not come from Microsoft, it's come from a very different place, and wanting to support Apple stuff, was the initial trigger, which is
Microsoft
now, but at the time. I know it does, but at the time that was the big push towards it, which was very much not part of the core way of Microsoft thinking at the time. And I think it is a lot more now, which is great. But I think that's where a lot of community, and if I think back, way back to the 2000s, what inspired me was a lot of the bloggers talking about the working around the open source with .NET, people like Scott Guthrie, who's now running Azure Services, Scott Hanselman, really inspiring people to go into the open source world and do things with Microsoft services that were a bit different. And I think a lot of community things do there. They take it a slightly different direction to what you expect. So I think there's a big benefit of getting that more rounded view of some of the things, of saying, you're not the only person who grumbles about that.
I think from the user groups that I've attended or ran, it's also getting the right speakers who are experienced. So coming from a consultancy background, and they've done this many times for different customers. And for me, it's never one solution for a customer. If they came to me with a document management or an intranet requirement, it's not a cookie cutter approach. You have to adapt and adopt accordingly to that organization. And I think a lot of the attendees that I've seen coming from a single organization, and they're learning, best practice and hearing it firsthand from consultants, that, just because you've done this structure and you've got subsites and site collections and hubs, it's not the same for someone else. So I think it's sharing. It's, Microsoft provide recommendations, but for me, sometimes take it with a pinch of salt.
They only go to a certain depth as well. They'll be talking about the easy scenarios often.
The recommendations I'm not necessarily. I always remember the SharePoint server recommendations and everybody just laughing at them, going, "Who's going to have 128 servers to set up 4 different environments?" Then we came across a client who actually did, but that was another story altogether. But I think you're right.
Did it work better?
Yeah, we managed to save them a lot of money. Let's put it that way.
It's a good support contract, was it?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. But I think you're right. For a lot of people in the consultancy space, we forget how many people actually are at different stages of their journey learning. And I think that's always important for us to remember that, there's always people who are starting out who need to kind of learn, well, what's the current best practice? And there are always organizations who are trying to transform how they're working and what they're doing, and will then be looking at technology that maybe has been, for whatever reason, not available to them, and now they look at it. So everybody on those different stages of the journey, I think it's very easy for us when we're in the consultancy space to kind of go, well, the cutting edge is the place to be, whereas actually we forget that it's only like 5% of us who are at that space on a daily basis. Most organizations are, they are behind us somewhere and trying to catch up. So there's always stuff that we can share that is going to be useful for people.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've spent more of my career on the other side of the fence, the non-consultancy, and that's exactly it. You'd be stuck there on SharePoint 2007 and be talking to people who are on 2013, even going up to 2016, and still being on 2007 and dealing with the pain there, and talking about the different elements you get with 2016, and then how great online is and everything's run for you. And it's like, oh, that would be nice. That would be really
I remember 15 or so years ago working for an organization outside of consultancy, outside of Microsoft being a partner. And we just completed a 2007 on-premise, SharePoint production farm. We did an intranet, we did some document management. And I remember thinking, right, the project's coming to an end. That's it now for 3 years. Unless I move to another organization that is either looking to do something more with that 2007 or already thinking about the next piece to the puzzle, because they were already, a couple of years behind already, I'm going to get left behind. So that's when I then jumped and joined a Microsoft partner as a junior consultant. And, for me, that's when you 2 or 3 projects on the go. You've got customers that are 2007, 2010, and that's where Office 365 started coming to life, wasn't it? 8 years ago, give or take.
10 now, isn't it?
10 now, I think.
They've had, it's a 10-year anniversary this year, because it's was it 20 years of SharePoint, 10 years of Office 365. So
you had customers that are not going to the cloud, don't trust it, and then 2 years later, everyone's then starting, and and those customers that that organization that I used to work for still got 2010 servers. So we're at the cutting edge, and I've been interviewing SharePoint consultants for the last few weeks, and they're coming on board. Yeah, I'm a SharePoint consultant. I've worked. I can do document management. I can do intranets. I can do Power Apps, etc. And you start quizzing them to the depth, and it's quite obvious that they're not the same depth that we are, because we're doing it day in, day out. We are at the front line, I suppose. And those are the sort of people that are coming to the user groups to learn. So rather than them spending half the day on Twitter or LinkedIn and reading roadmaps and Microsoft blogs, they're coming to us as part of the user groups or summits or conferences to sort of get that in-depth knowledge in an 8-hour period rather than 10 minutes a day over 8 weeks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though, isn't it? Because you talk about trying to hire people, but there's on one side, you kind of understand the people. So as you said, Gary, you kind of know the names, and you kind of, you can gauge how passionate people are about how they share things, or whether they just attend. And that's always, when I'm hiring, I'm always looking for people who are attending things to learn, because that's a great way to learn. But you also have it from an organizational side. There are benefits, for organizations like ours to actually participate and to sponsor events and, to have stands, and because it is a way for us to actually, as an organization, promote ourselves and promote our technical credibility, but also, to get our name there. We were talking about the swag at Nottingham earlier, weren't we? About tables and tables of swag to take away. But we all know that the nerd in all of us just wants to gather as much stuff as possible when we go to things in person. But that serves a really valuable purpose when we're actually trying to say, which are the companies to go to, which are the people to trust. If they're going to be working on our project, well, that's great. We're going to have those people working on our actual project. Wow. So there's benefits from both sides, and sponsoring events, great for an organization, but it really highlights, how passionate those organizations are around sharing, as well as, how much they trust their people and want to promote their people as well.
And I think it gives you trust for their products, things like Fallow Intranet, the amount they support their staff to get out there and speak, and others, and you hear from them and feel inspired by them and go, well, actually that product sounds great on there.
Yeah, getting out there as well, though. I mean, it's the user groups are such great proving grounds to just get yourself out there, get in front of people, get that, feedback, and just getting, on the horse, so to speak, of like getting up there in front of people and just talking, because lots of people have got different backgrounds. I went in through support and being a developer, and then moved into being a consultant, and it's like, we kind of look at it maybe of just going, hey, you just jump from a dev to be a consultant, it's easy, right? It's like, no, it's difficult. You've got to get in front of people, and you've got to have a conversation and a story, to back up what you're trying to say as well, and how you formulate that. And it's different skills, and you only get those skills by going out there and doing it. And I think having the user groups, I've been very fortunate myself of being in companies that have promoted that, so it's been easy to go, what, I'm going to have a go. And I'm in front of people who I know, some people I don't know, but that will then push me on to speak at other events, or then go up to a conference and just scale up basically. But yeah, those are the things I think the user groups really have a massive benefit in playing of enriching the community, of bringing people on board. Like we've got the virtual events at the moment of getting involved in open source. It's the same thing, right? It's people wanting to put new speakers up there so that they get the opportunity, so that they can be get on the journey to become an MVP potentially. You've got to start somewhere. So yeah, they've been perfect proving ground.
It's also a great proving ground if you want to move into consultancy, you want to start actually moving up the ladder, or if you want to change what you want to do, it's an opportunity, as the open source ecosystem is, to actually demonstrate your skills and your interests, and to build your network.
And a chance to build those skills. Go and pick a talk that you want to do that maybe you only know a little bit about. Teach yourself, make it enough that you can share the knowledge there, and you'll find yourself, you become even more of an expert as well. There's something they always say, that if you tell people things, you realize what you don't know, and by going in there, drilling into that and thinking, I can knock this presentation together in 20 minutes. Oh, it doesn't do that. Oh, it doesn't do that. Yeah, okay. No, that doesn't react quite how I thought it was.
That's just PowerPoint you're talking about now.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think the user groups as well are useful for not just the speakers, the other speakers there listening to the other speakers, because I try to attend sessions that I would not normally attend, or would be outside of my normal comfort zone, because that's when you then learn what else is possible. So having user groups that, you want to attract an audience that's interested in SharePoint or Power Platform or security and compliance, but it's good to sort of have a little bit of a mix in there and cover a topic that sort of just sits on the outside of it, so that, actually that's quite useful because that's relevant to this project that's coming up.
For me, that's the golden rule. Yeah, a golden rule of attending any conference is always go to one session that's just completely interesting and not something that you normally do.
Yeah. And
Ignite is there's about 1,000 sessions that are like that at Ignite.
But Ignite is really good because normally Monday, Tuesdays is new product release, new information, and they're the ones that you want to attend. But then come the Wednesday, you've heard it all, there's no more new stuff. So that's when you then start dipping into the other sessions, that you would never normally, go and attend.
Yeah, you're also quite tired by then as well.
Yeah. And if it's boring, you just have a nap at the back. Yeah, it's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that with the events, though, it's when you're talking about user groups, there's the organization of the user groups, but when it's conferences, in-person conferences, as I'm sure you're finding out, Aaron, there's a lot of organizational requirements and a lot of people needed to actually help. And I know, all of the SharePoint Saturdays, the collab days, they all have a massive group of volunteers, so that's the other way. These events don't take place just on their own with just people miraculously turning up, unless you've got a magic wand to just sort of create things.
Yeah, I think it's technically possible that you could create a large conference single-handedly, but it will become a full-time thing. And then you're sort of restricted to what you can do.
Sorry. So just a bit of context for everyone else. Aaron is, was it co-chairing the South Coast Summit, and is the co-organizer or full organizer?
So it's Nathan and I. So Nathan Sweeney, who works at Ingram Micro, myself. But we sort of managed to recruit about 30 helpers, and I think most of them are. I think all three of you are on that team, which is very much appreciated. And
we get involved in talking, helping to organise and things, but there are lots of things they need doing, even if it's just kind of shepherding people towards rooms, helping run a room and let people know what's on there. There's all sorts of things involved in setting up the conference, even sort of helping to find sponsors. It's always nice to have someone making the tea and things like that. So, volunteer, get involved, get to know more people, and gradually see more and more that goes on. And do sign up for the South Coast Summit. If you're watching on the video, then details for pre-registering on the screen at the moment.
Yeah, I think without that, the event team behind the scenes, it just becomes then just a large user group. You turn up, you don't really have that much interaction. You go off to a room. But I think the team that we've got, everyone's committed. Everyone wants to be a part of it. It's not as if it's okay, I'll do it for the sake of doing it. And we've got some really good plans. Friday, we're going to kick off with some workshops. So I think there's 7 or 8 workshops planned. So for those that want to get sort of hands-on and do a full day on one of the tracks, and obviously you've got the Saturday. And because of the sheer number of sessions and speakers, having that event team there just to help, on the day, hopefully nobody's got any other plans other than to do their session if they're speaking or attend other sessions. Mm-hmm. But 1,400 people turning up. We've got 35 sponsors. There's probably going to be about 130 speakers. So divvying up the 10 or 11 tracks that we've got, 2 or 3 event team. We sort of refer to them as assigned to a particular track. It's just making sure that the speakers on the day are there. They've turned up and they've got everything, ready to do what they need to do, rather than, Nathan and I trying to contact 130 people, make sure they're all there, and probably running around like headless chickens as well, sorting out everything else that may be going well on the day.
I'm sure
you'll be doing that anyway. Yeah. I guarantee you'll be running around like a headless chicken anyway.
And I'm sure everyone will have the habit, they won't have forgotten in the last year to turn up to places on time and think, I just click go on Teams. Oh, hang on, I've got to get to there and set up my machine and hook up to the HDMI and all the things that speakers have got a bit used to over the years that maybe the habits dropped off in the last year or so.
You mean you've got to get your bag out with your various different adapters for, it's like, that one worked the last time I used it. When was that? Oh, it was 3 years ago. Right, no, I need another one, and you're rushing round or your power's gone. I've had that before.
Power's gone, yeah. I think the other
Yeah.
thing, just on that, the pre-conference days, they are always some of the best value for money for training, because you tend to get really, really good real world experience during those sessions, whereas if you go to a formal training provider, you just get the out of the box training, and those sessions tend to be really good, especially if you're going to do one track and then pretty much you can skip the sessions on that track the following day, can't you? And just go and do other things. So it's a really cost-effective way to actually skill up and learn new things.
I remember Ignite, the last Ignite in person, and I did the pre-workshop days, but I chose something completely off topic, sort of just went and did a machine learning piece, completely off topic to what I'm normally used to, which is really good because you get your hands dirty, you learn a new product, new skill that you would just not normally get to do in your day-to-day job.
Yeah. Was that on the Sunday, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. It's always good just to learn, get those deep dive days.
Yeah, indeed.
So I think the thing is this: get out there, get to know other people. I'd also say chat to other people at the event. You don't just have to try and speak to speakers and the famous people. You hear what the challenges other people are doing, and they might, they're working the SharePoint world. They're going to a community event. They might be quite like you and be nice as well. So don't have to ask necessarily just technical questions. You can just chat to people too.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. The user groups that are going on at the moment, some of the best conversations are actually taking place in the chat, and none of us know everything, so don't be afraid to ask a question that you think might be challenging. It's always good to get a speaker to go, yeah, I'm going to have to go and investigate that for you.
Yeah, it's the questions that you get where you're kind of like, I would have never have thought of that, but you've obviously got some experience that you're going through right now, or that you can see this piece of technology that I'm talking about that can apply to your situation that I'd just never have thought of. And you're like, oh yeah, actually. And then you're straight off and trying to figure out, okay, how's that going to work? Those kind of things when you speak in user groups, that conversation afterwards of someone listening to what you've said and then wanting to take it the next step is really interesting. It's really, it's really good that, it just validates why you've got up there and kind of spoken about whatever you've spoken about, because you want to help people as well and make things better. The whole patterns and practices is just standing on the shoulders of what everyone else has done beforehand. And we can't get to that point without people sharing things, sharing their, failures as well as successes. The sessions that I really loved from user groups, Tales from the Trenches, I went through all this pain and I did this didn't quite work. And, they are as valuable as this is really cool. I think it'll help. All sorts of different sessions that you can find.
No, I agree. Anything else from anyone? Otherwise, I think we'll start to wrap up there on the shocking events that we may actually finish on time for this one.
I was going to say that, considering the start, that's quite phenomenal.
So, absolutely. So I'm going to share. Oops, stop sharing. I'm going to share my screen just because we are talking about community events, and I know we talked about a few last week. But a few other ones I think to talk about. Aaron, you run the Microsoft Cloud South Coast user group, which I think is fascinating because you talked about kind of covering a broad range, but you do with this. It's not just Microsoft 365. It really is across Azure, Dynamics, the whole
shebang, really, isn't it? Yeah, indeed. I think that website's probably a little bit out of date because we.
I was just looking at that going.
We moved to Meetup because it was just a better platform, really. But yeah, we started about a year ago, and we alternate between different tracks per month. So we'll have a modern workplace track, we'll have a Dynamics Power Platform track, we have data and AI, we have an Azure track, and every 3 or 4 months it'll be a different track. So you've got Connor Doyle that does the Dynamics and Power Platform piece. I sort of take on the modern workplace. Nathan takes over the Azure piece. So as well, not just running those user groups, if you did one every month, it becomes a full-time job because you've got to find the speakers, you've then got to upload the slides from the previous session. So at least, for me, it's arranging one every 3 months, give or take. And to be fair, we get a good turnout for these. Normally 40 to 70 people. Don't know what geographic locations they are, but yeah, it's quite a popular piece, and
some great chats as well. I think it's the chat, as Al said earlier, the chat in the side, the text chat, the verbal conversation. I think you always encourage on those as well. That's really good.
Yeah, and hopefully once we're out of this lockdown phase, we can actually do them back in person. And I think the attendance numbers will go down because we're attracting a lot of people from all parts of the world, all parts of the country. But I'd rather a small 10, 15 local community and slowly build it out, if that makes sense, rather than having the larger global audience, because it becomes a bit more personal. One another, you can build those relationships, etc. And that's where the South Coast Commit's born from. Let's do a bigger one-day conference. Let's have 10, 11 tracks ranging from Power Platform dynamics, security compliance, development extensibility, adoption change management, and let's do 10 or 11 sessions on each of those, rather than doing just a dynamics focused conference and having 100 sessions that you then got to pick and choose. I want to go to that one, but that one's running at the same time. So hopefully, providing we get the agenda right, on the Saturday there should be 10 or 11 tracks, 8 or 9 sessions in each, and you should be able to follow track after track without having that, I want to go to this one, but this one's running at the same time. And then you've got the sponsors as well in the theatre, in the expo halls, on the theatres doing, their sessions. Some of those will be their company products and services, but I'm sure, again, a bit similar to how I started out really at Future Decoded. Some of those senior consultants that want to speak in front of a large audience get their limelight really by doing some smaller 20-minute technical demos.
And there's going to be a podcast track as well, isn't there, I hear?
Hopefully. we need to talk about that.
just get everyone walking around with microphones. There's going to be microphones and cameras there you're on.
Yeah, I think the plan is, the expo hall's got this really nice balcony that overlooks. So hopefully we'll set something up there, and the likes of the Grey Hat Beers. Hopefully we'll hopefully be able to record your session live, and obviously we'll have plenty of speakers that you can do interviews with. And there's obviously other podcasts, podcasters out there in the UK. So hopefully we can get a couple more involved, and it just adds to the variety of the day, really.
So yeah, it should be good, and certainly the ones I've spoken to are very up for doing it. So yeah, it should be a good day. In terms of other ones, I think we've touched on the London Power Platform user group a few times, Al, and you had the meeting last Tuesday.
Last week, yeah. Next time is 15th of April, I think. And we've got
in person? No, not quite. No, then we thought that's still inside, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be gatherings till autumn at the earliest.
June, and absolutely. So 15th of April for the next one. Keep an eye out.
Keep an eye out. That should be going up soon.
Guests? No, that's not the next ones.
No, that's the one that we've just had.
And you've got your security. No, that was the wrong one.
That one's tomorrow.
Your security and compliance group. You are speaking tomorrow at the Azure Thames Valley one, which is
Thames Valley, yeah,
on there. That's not the one I was meaning to show, but obviously it's decided to vanish. There we go. The Microsoft 365 security and compliance user group. So next one, those March 31st.
Wednesday of every month. So March 31st, Albert and Tice. There should be some quite interesting sessions. Teams architecture for compliance, and setting up your first Azure Sentinel environment in 50 minutes.
Which I'm intrigued. I'm definitely going to keep an eye out for that one. I think it's Easter holidays for Cubs, so I'm hoping there won't be a Cubs session overlapping with that, so I can join it. What was the other one I was going to mention? Yeah, just one big. I think Aaron's done a great job, but I think one of the spearheads of the community-driven conferences was the Collab Summit, and they're doing a big party on 27th of March for SharePoint's 20th birthday. So I'll put in the show notes a link to that, but sign up. I don't really know what they're doing, if I'm honest, for it, but there's going to be celebrations apparently. So sign up, find out.
Commiserations are just a good excuse for a SharePoint.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I've been doing SharePoint for 20 years.
It's going to be lots of people droning on about how bad it used to be.
We look back at WS 3.0.
Oh yeah, WSPs, all that server-side development. Oh yeah, lovely.
So there are massive events. There's all sorts of things going on out there. I'm sure many of you are listening thinking, yeah, I've had too many of these events. There's too much going on. Now's your time. You've had a bit of a pause, hopefully post-Ignite and things. Maybe it didn't look as much there. Maybe don't go to those big ones. Go to the small user groups. Get involved with something local to you. Get chatting to people and get re-inspired again. I think that's a real joy of it. Go and learn something you didn't know about from one of the user groups. Go and talk to someone you didn't know, and try and find that love back. And as we start to open up a bit more, let's try and bring more together. Go on, Gary. You're going to laugh at me now.
Nope. It's all right. It's very inspiring. Very inspiring.
Absolutely. I think go up there, enjoy that. I think all of you who organise the user groups, I'll be honest, I just knew I couldn't commit time with the family and age of kids at the moment. So I absolutely doff my hat to why I've tried to help push us all to getting Grey Hat Beard going as my little bit of contributions back. So I'll certainly be attending user groups as well. But Aaron, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully I'm sure we'll be speaking again soon and as getting things moving for South Coast Summit.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Not a problem at all. Hopefully next time we'll be back to using Teams, or at least we'll have been able to prepare a bit more for it. It's actually worked quite well, I think. So maybe we will look at this again. But
let's make sure we've actually recorded it, eh?
Yeah. We'll see. Hopefully some of you will see this again and we can find out a way to get the audio out onto the podcast. But otherwise, I've been Gray.
I've been Hat.
I've been Beard.
Thank you very much, Aaron, and speak to you all again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.